Hello again. We're going to read 3 little stories written by Beatrix Potter today. The first one is called The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher. And Mr. Jeremy Fisher was a frog. Once upon a time, there was a frog called Mr. Jeremy Fisher. He lived in a little damp house amongst the buttercups at the edge of a pond. The water was all slippy sloppy in the larder and in the back passage, but Mr. Jeremy liked getting his feet wet. No one ever scolded him, told him off, and he never caught a cold. Now, a larder is a place where you keep food, a small room where you keep food. Sometimes it's called a pantry, and I've got a pantry in my house. I keep a lot of food in there. He was quite pleased when he looked out and saw large drops of rain splashing in the pond. I will get some worms and go fishing and catch a dish of minnows for my dinner, said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. Minnows are tiny little fish. If I catch more than 5 fish, I will invite my friends Mr. Alderman Ptolemy Tortoise and Sir Isaac Newton. The alderman, however, eats salad. I guess you know what salad is, lettuce and tomatoes and things like that. Mr. Jeremy put on a mackintosh and a pair of shiny galoshes. He took his rod and basket and set off with enormous hops to the place where he kept his boat. Now, mackintosh is another word for raincoat or cagoule, and galoshes is another name, an old-fashioned name for Wellingtons or wellies, to keep your feet dry. The boat was round and green and very like the other water lily leaves. It was tied to a water plant in the middle of the pond. Then he settled himself cross-legged and arranged his... wait a minute. Mr. Jeremy took a reed pole and pushed the boat out into open water. I know a good place for minnows, said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. Mr. Jeremy stuck his pole into the mud and fastened the boat to it. Then he settled himself cross-legged and arranged his fishing tackle. He had the dearest little red float. His rod was a tough stalk of grass. His line was a fine long white horsehair, and he tied a little wriggling worm at the end. There he is. Wait a minute. There he is sitting with his fishing tackle. The rain trickled down his back, and for nearly an hour he stared at the float. This is getting tiresome. I think I should like some lunch, said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. Tiresome means he's getting fed up with it, he's getting bored. He punted back again amongst the water plants and took some lunch out of his basket. I will eat a butterfly sandwich and wait till the shower is over, said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. Butterfly sandwich? Oh, don't think I'd like that. A great big water beetle came up underneath the lily leaf and tweaked the toe of one of his galoshes. Touched it, nipped it. Mr. Jeremy crossed his legs up shorter, out of reach, and went on eating his sandwich. There's the big beetle. Once or twice something moved about with a rustle and a splash among the rushes at the side of the pond. "I trust that is not a rat," said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. "I think I'd better get away from here." Mr. Jeremy shoved the boat out again a little way and dropped in the bait. There was a bite almost immediately. The float gave a tremendous bobbit. "A minnow! A minnow! I have him by the nose!" cried Mr. Jeremy Fisher, jerking up his rod. Oh, look. There he is. He's got something there. But what a horrible surprise! Instead of a smooth, fat minnow, Mr. Jeremy landed little Jack Sharp, the stickleback, covered with spines. The stickleback floundered about the boat, pricking and snapping until he was quite out of breath. Then he jumped back into the water. Dear me. Sticklebacks have lots of prickles on their back. And a shoal of other little fishes put their head out and laughed at Mr. Jeremy Fisher. Dear. And while Mr. Jeremy sat disconsolately on the edge of his boat, that means he was sad, sucking his sore fingers and peering down into the water, a much worse thing happened. A really frightful thing it would have been if Mr. Jeremy had not been wearing a mackintosh. Oh. A great big enormous trout came up, kerflop, and it seized Mr. Jeremy with a snap. Ow, ow, ow! And then it turned and dived down to the bottom of the pond. But the trout was so displeased with the taste of the mackintosh, that means he didn't like it at all, that in less than half a minute it spat him out again, and the only thing it swallowed was Mr. Jeremy's goloshes. Oh, goodness me, he was lucky. Where are we? There we go. That's it. Mr. Jeremy bounced up to the surface of the water like a cork and the bubbles out of a soda water bottle, and he swam with all his might to the edge of the pond. He scrambled out on the first bank he came to, and he hopped home across the meadow with his mackintosh all in tatters. Oh, dearie me. I just think he was very lucky. "What a mercy that was not a pike," said Mr. Jeremy Fisher. "I have lost my rod and basket, but it does not much matter, for I am sure I should never have dared to go fishing again." Oh, scared him off. He put some sticking plaster on his fingers, and his friends both came to dinner. He could not offer them fish, but he had something else in his larder. Sir Isaac Newton wore his black and gold waistcoat. So that's Sir Isaac Newton. No, it isn't. That's Sir Isaac Newton there. He's a newt. And Alderman Ptolemy Tortoise brought a salad with him in a string bag. And instead of a nice dish of minnows, they had roasted grasshopper with ladybird sauce, which frogs consider a beautiful treat. But I think it must have been nasty. The end of that story. Let's have another one. This next one is very short, and it's the story of a fierce, bad rabbit. There he is, sitting. Do you think he looks fierce? I think he does a little bit. This is a fierce bad rabbit. Look at his savage whiskers and his claws and his turned up tail. This is a nice gentle rabbit. His mother has given him a carrot. He looks sweet, doesn't he? The bad rabbit would like some carrot. But what he's doing is trying to take it away from the good rabbit. He doesn't say please, he takes it. Oh, goodness me, that's not nice. And he scratches the good rabbit very badly. He was not a nice character, was he? The good rabbit creeps away and hides in a hole. It feels sad. This is a man with a gun. He sees something sitting on a bench. He thinks it is a funny bird. He comes creeping up behind the trees. And then he shoots. Bang! And this is what happens. Now I can see some ears and a carrot and I think a tail there. But this is all he finds on the bench when he rushes up with his gun. And there, look, is the tail and the carrot. And maybe some whiskers. The good rabbit peeps out of its hole. I bet it was frightened. And it sees the bad rabbit tearing past without any tail or whiskers. The end. Serves him right, doesn't it? He was a bad, fierce rabbit, wasn't he? The next story is about a little kitten called Miss Moppet. The story of Miss Moppet. Now, let's see what happens here. There she is, with a little mouse. This is a pussy called Miss Moppet. She thinks she has heard a mouse. You know, cats are always watching out for mice, aren't they? This is the mouse peeping out behind the cupboard and making fun of Miss Moppet. He's not afraid of a kitten. This is Miss Moppet jumping just too late. She misses the mouse and hits her own head. Oh dear me. She thinks it is a very hard cupboard. Oh, she bashed her little head. Feeling sorry for herself, I think. The mouse watches Miss Moppet from the top of the cupboard. Miss Moppet ties up her head in a duster, that's a piece of cloth, and sits before the fire. She looks funny. She's covered all her face up. Just looks strange. The mouse thinks she is looking very ill. He comes sliding down the bell pole. Miss Moppet looks worse and worse. The mouse comes a little nearer. Oh, my goodness. What do you think might happen here? Miss Moppet holds her poor head in her paws and looks at him through a hole in the duster. The mouse comes very close. And then, all of a sudden, Miss Moppet jumps upon the mouse. Oh, wow. And because the mouse had teased Miss Moppet thinks she will tease the mouse, which is not at all nice of Miss Moppet. Oh, she's got the mouse trapped in that cloth, in that duster. She ties him up in the duster and tosses it about like a ball. That's not very nice. That's a bit cruel. In fact, it's very cruel. But she forgot about that hole in the duster, and when she untied it, there was no mouse. He has wriggled out and run away, and he is dancing a jig on the top of the cupboard. Now, a jig is a little dance. There, look. The end. He got away. There we are. So that's the end of our stories today. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.